In just 42 seconds, one of Britain's most beloved morning television hosts completely lost control on live TV, turning what should have been a lighthearted chat into an absolute train wreck that ended with Ricky Gervais being physically escorted off the set. A fiery argument erupted, voices were raised, accusations flew, and the nation watched in stunned silence as Lorraine Kelly's carefully crafted persona came crashing down in spectacular fashion. Before we dive into this explosive confrontation, make sure you subscribe to this channel for daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals. Hit that bell icon so you never miss the drama. The tension was palpable from the moment Ricky Gervais walked onto the Lorraine set. The comedian, known for his sharp wit and complete refusal to play by anyone's rules, settled into the bright orange sofa with his trademark smirk. Lorraine Kelly, wearing a perfectly pressed floral dress and her signature smile, welcomed him with what seemed like genuine warmth. "Ricky, lovely to have you here this morning," Lorraine chirped, clasping her hands together. The studio audience applauded politely, unaware they were about to witness television history. "Happy to be here, Lorraine," Ricky replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. There was an edge to his voice, a hint of something brewing beneath the surface. Lorraine jumped straight into the questions, asking about his latest comedy special. Ricky answered with his usual blend of humor and brutal honesty, making jokes that pushed the boundaries just enough to make the morning viewers shift uncomfortably in their seats. But Lorraine kept that smile plastered on, laughing at all the right moments, playing the perfect host. Then she made her first mistake. "Now, Ricky, you've been quite controversial lately with some of your material," Lorraine said, leaning forward slightly. "Some people have said your jokes go too far. How do you respond to critics who say you're punching down?" Ricky's expression hardened immediately. "Punching down? I'm not punching anywhere, Lorraine. I'm making jokes. There's a difference between making a joke and actually hurting someone." "Yes. But don't you think words have power?" Lorraine pressed. And there it was, the subtle shift in her voice. The sweetness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Judgment. "Of course, words have power," Ricky said, his voice rising slightly. "That's why comedy is important. It challenges ideas. It makes people think. But apparently, now we're supposed to pretend certain topics don't exist because someone might get offended." Lorraine's smile tightened. "I think it's about being kind, Ricky. Being considerate of other people's feelings." "Kind?" Ricky laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lorraine, I'm a comedian. My job isn't to make everyone feel comfortable. My job is to make people laugh and think. Sometimes that means saying things that make people uncomfortable." The audience had gone quiet now. The cheerful morning atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a thick tension that you could practically taste. Camera operators exchanged worried glances. The floor manager made frantic hand signals from behind the cameras. But Lorraine wasn't backing down. In fact, she was doubling down. "I just think," she continued, her Scottish accent becoming more pronounced as her emotions rose, "that someone in your position, with your platform, should be more responsible. You have millions of fans who listen to everything you say." Ricky's eyebrows shot up. "Responsible? You want to talk to me about being responsible? You sit here every morning telling people how to think, what to believe, pushing whatever narrative your producers want you to push, and you're lecturing me about responsibility." "I do not push narratives," Lorraine shot back, her voice sharp now. The sweet morning host persona was cracking. "I have honest conversations with people." "Honest?" Ricky laughed again, shaking his head. "Come on, Lorraine. You interview celebrities and lob them softball questions so they can promote whatever they're selling. Don't pretend this is hard-hitting journalism." You could see the color rising in Lorraine's cheeks. "At least I don't make my living by mocking people who are already struggling." "There it is," Ricky said, pointing at her. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? You've already decided I'm the bad guy before I even sat down. This whole thing was a setup." "It wasn't a setup," Lorraine insisted, but her voice wavered slightly. "I'm asking you legitimate questions that people want answered." "No, you're trying to paint me as some sort of bully," Ricky countered, his voice getting louder. "You brought me on here to have a go at me, to show your viewers how woke and progressive you are by taking down the controversial comedian." The studio had gone completely silent except for their voices. Even the crew had stopped moving, frozen in place as they watched the confrontation unfold. "That's not true," Lorraine said, but she was losing her composure rapidly. "I simply think that comedy should lift people up, not tear them down. And I think," Ricky said slowly, deliberately, "that you're so desperate to be liked by everyone that you've forgotten what it means to have an actual opinion. You're terrified of offending anyone, so you just smile and nod and agree with whatever the current popular opinion is." Lorraine's face went red. "How dare you? I have plenty of opinions. I just choose to express them respectfully." "Respectfully?" Ricky scoffed. "You just accused me of mocking struggling people. That's not respectful, Lorraine. That's you making assumptions about my character based on bits of my comedy you've probably never even watched properly." "I've seen your work," Lorraine snapped. "Have you, really? Or have you just seen clips on Twitter taken out of context?" Ricky challenged. Things were spiraling now. Fast. What started as a slightly uncomfortable interview had transformed into a full-blown argument, and neither of them seemed capable of pulling back. Lorraine tried to regain control. "Look, Ricky, I think we're getting off track here." "No, we're right on track," Ricky interrupted. "This is exactly where you wanted this to go. You wanted the confrontation. You wanted the viral moment. Well, congratulations. You're getting it." "I did not want this," Lorraine said, her voice cracking slightly with anger. "I wanted to have a civilized conversation about the impact of your comedy. But you didn't come into this conversation with an open mind," Ricky said, leaning forward now. "You came in with your mind already made up. You think my comedy is harmful. You think I'm harmful. And you wanted to put me in my place on national television." "That's not fair," Lorraine protested. But even she didn't sound convinced by her own words. "What's not fair?" Ricky said, his voice dropping lower, more intense. "Is you using your platform to vilify me because you don't like my style of comedy. You don't have to like it, Lorraine. You don't have to watch it. But don't sit there on your high horse pretending you're taking some moral stand." The mask had completely slipped now. Lorraine Kelly, the cheerful morning host who never had a bad word to say about anyone, was visibly furious. Her hands were gripping the armrest of her chair so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "You know what your problem is, Ricky?" she said, her voice shaking. "You hide behind comedy. You say whatever horrible thing you want, and then when people call you out on it, you just say it's a joke. You refuse to take any responsibility for the hurt you cause." "Hurt I cause?" Ricky's voice rose sharply. "I tell jokes, Lorraine. Jokes. If someone is genuinely hurt by a joke, that's their issue to deal with, not mine. I'm not responsible for managing everyone's emotions." "That's such a selfish way to look at it," Lorraine shot back. "It's not selfish, it's reality," Ricky countered. "You can't go through life expecting everyone to tiptoe around your feelings. The world doesn't work that way." "No, but decent human beings try not to deliberately hurt others," Lorraine said. "And I don't deliberately hurt people," Ricky insisted. "I make jokes. There's a massive difference." "Not to the people you joke about," Lorraine said quietly, and for a moment she thought she'd landed a point. But Ricky wasn't having it. "Oh, spare me the self-righteous indignation. You've made plenty of jokes at people's expense over the years. Don't act like you're above it all." "That's different," Lorraine said quickly. Too quickly. "How? How is it different?" Ricky demanded. "Because I punch up, not down," Lorraine said, using the phrase that had started this whole mess. Ricky threw his hands up. "There we go again with the punching down nonsense. Who decides who's up and who's down? You? The Twitter mob? Some arbitrary court of public opinion? Society decides," Lorraine said firmly. "Society?" Ricky laughed bitterly. "Society can't even decide what's offensive from one week to the next. Something that's perfectly fine to joke about on Monday is suddenly career-ending by Friday. You want me to navigate that minefield while still being funny? It's impossible." "Then maybe you should try harder," Lorraine snapped. The audience gasped. It was a low blow, and everyone in the studio knew it. Ricky's face darkened. "Maybe I should try harder? That's rich coming from someone who asks the same bland questions day after day and never challenges anyone on anything." "I challenge people all the time," Lorraine protested. "Do you?" Ricky shot back. "When was the last time you actually pushed back on something someone said? When was the last time you risked your precious likability to take a real stand?" I'm taking a stand right now, Lorraine said, her voice shaking with emotion. No, you're having a tantrum because I won't play along with your narrative, Ricky said coldly. That was it. That was the point of no return. Lorraine stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You know what, Ricky? I don't have to sit here and be insulted on my own show. I'm not insulting you, Ricky said, still seated. I'm telling you the truth. You might not like it, but that doesn't make it an insult. You called me bland, Lorraine said, her voice rising. You said I never take a stand. You accused me of not having real opinions. How is that not insulting? It's observation, Ricky replied calmly, which only seemed to make Lorraine angrier. Well, here's an observation for you, Lorraine said, pointing at him. You're an arrogant, self-centered man who thinks his right to make jokes is more important than other people's feelings. You don't care who you hurt, as long as you get your laughs. That's not true, Ricky said, his own anger finally breaking through. He stood up now, too, facing her across the small coffee table that separated them. I care about people. But I also believe in freedom of speech. I believe comedy should be allowed to push boundaries, and I'm sorry if that offends your delicate sensibilities. My delicate sensibilities? Lorraine's voice went up an octave. Don't you dare patronize me. Then don't sit there judging me for doing my job, Ricky fired back. The floor manager was making desperate gestures now, trying to signal for a commercial break. But neither Lorraine nor Ricky was paying attention. They were locked in their confrontation, both too angry to back down. Your job is to make people laugh, Lorraine said, not to hurt them. And your job is to have interesting conversations, Ricky retorted, not to lecture your guests about their moral failings. I'm not lecturing, Lorraine insisted. Yes, you are, Ricky said. You've been lecturing me since the moment I sat down. Every question has been loaded. Every response has been dripping with disapproval. You brought me here to make an example of me. I brought you here to hold you accountable, Lorraine corrected. Accountable for what? For jokes? Ricky's voice was incredulous now. You want to hold a comedian accountable for making jokes? Do you hear how insane that sounds? They're not just jokes when they hurt real people, Lorraine said. Then those people need to get thicker skin, Ricky said bluntly. The audience gasped again. Even some of the crew members looked shocked. Lorraine's face went through several shades of red. That's exactly the kind of attitude I'm talking about. You just don't care. I do care, Ricky said, his voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. But I also think we've created a culture where everyone is constantly looking for reasons to be offended, where people seek out things to be upset about. And comedians are easy targets because we're supposed to push boundaries. That's literally what we do. There's pushing boundaries and then there's being cruel, Lorraine said. I'm not cruel, Ricky said firmly. I'm honest. If people can't handle honesty wrapped in humor, that's their problem. No, it's your problem, Lorraine shot back. Because you're losing fans. You're losing respect. People are tired of your shtick. My shtick? Ricky laughed harshly. At least I have something original to say. What do you have? A nice smile and an ability to make small talk? Lorraine's jaw dropped. Get out. What? Ricky said. I said get out, Lorraine repeated, louder this time. Get off my show. Your show? Ricky said. You don't even own this show. You're just the face they put on camera. I don't care, Lorraine said, her voice shaking now. I want you gone. Security. Ricky held up his hands. Relax, I'm leaving. I wouldn't want to stay somewhere I'm clearly not welcome. You were welcome until you started attacking me, Lorraine said. I didn't attack you, Ricky said, starting to remove his microphone. I defended myself against your thinly veiled accusations. Thinly veiled? Lorraine said. I wasn't being subtle, Ricky. I think your comedy is harmful. I think you use free speech as an excuse to be a dick. And I think you came on this show expecting me to just smile and go along with it. And I think, Ricky said, dropping his microphone on the chair, that you invited me here to boost your ratings by creating controversy. And now you're upset because I didn't roll over and let you have your moment. That's not what happened, Lorraine insisted. But her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Ricky challenged. Be honest, Lorraine. For once in your career, just be honest. You wanted this fight. Lorraine opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Her face was still flushed, her hands still shaking slightly. The truth was written all over her face, even if she wouldn't say it out loud. Ricky shook his head, a sad smile on his face. That's what I thought. He turned to walk off the set. But Lorraine wasn't done yet. You know what? She called after him. Maybe if you spent less time defending your right to offend people, and more time actually listening to why they're offended, you might learn something. Ricky stopped and turned back. And maybe if you spent less time trying to please everyone, and more time developing an actual backbone, you might have a show worth watching. The insult hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Lorraine's face went pale, then red again. How dare you? I dare because someone needs to tell you the truth, Ricky said. You're not a journalist. You're not an interviewer. You're a morning TV personality who makes people feel good about themselves while selling them whatever product or idea your producers want pushed. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't pretend it's something more meaningful than it is. Get the hell off my stage, Lorraine said, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with venom. Gladly, Ricky said. This was a waste of time anyway. He started walking toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent studio. The cameras followed him, catching every moment of his departure. The audience sat frozen, unsure whether to applaud, boo, or just sit in shocked silence. Most chose silence. But Lorraine couldn't let him have the last word. You're finished, Ricky, she called out. After this, no one's going to want to work with you. Ricky stopped one more time, turned, and looked at her with something that might have been pity. Lorraine, he said quietly, but his voice carried across the studio. I was never worried about people wanting to work with me. But you might want to worry about whether people will trust you after they see how you really are when someone doesn't play along with your act. With that, he turned and walked through the studio doors. They swung shut behind him with a loud bang that seemed to shake the entire room. Lorraine stood there, breathing heavily, her carefully crafted image shattered around her. She looked at the audience, at the cameras, at her crew, and suddenly seemed to realize what had just happened. The color drained from her face. We're going to a break, she said weakly, and the floor manager frantically signaled to cut. But it was too late. The damage was done. The confrontation had been broadcast live. Millions had watched Lorraine Kelly lose her temper, make accusations, and ultimately kick her guest off the show. They'd seen her mask slip, seen the real person underneath the cheerful morning host persona. As the studio lights dimmed and the crew rushed around trying to figure out what to do next, Lorraine sank back into her chair. Her hands were trembling. She'd hosted thousands of shows, interviewed countless celebrities, and prided herself on always keeping things light and friendly. But this morning, everything had gone wrong. What was supposed to be a simple interview had turned into a disaster. And the worst part was, deep down, she knew Ricky was right. She had gone into that interview with an agenda. She had wanted to challenge him, to show everyone that she wasn't just a soft interviewer who never asked hard questions. Instead, she'd shown everyone that, when pushed, she couldn't handle it. She'd lost control, let her emotions take over, and kicked her guest off the show like a child throwing a tantrum. The studio doors were still swinging slightly from where Ricky had exited. Lorraine stared at them, replaying the confrontation in her mind. Every sharp word, every accusation, every moment where things escalated further and further until there was no coming back. She'd wanted to prove she could be tough, could take a stand, could hold someone accountable, but instead, she'd just proven that she was exactly what Ricky had accused her of being. Someone so desperate to be liked and relevant that she'd create controversy just to get attention, and now she'd have to live with the consequences. The clip would be everywhere within hours. Social media would dissect every second of the confrontation. People would take sides. Her reputation, carefully built over decades, might never recover. All because she couldn't just let it go. All because she had to push. All because she wanted to win an argument with a comedian who made a living out of not backing down. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd accused Ricky of being unable to take criticism, of hiding behind his comedy, of refusing to be held accountable. But in the end, it was her who couldn't handle being challenged. It was her who lost control. It was her who ended the conversation by throwing her guest out rather than continuing to engage. Somewhere outside the studio, Ricky Gervais was probably already tweeting about what had happened, turning the whole thing into material for his next show. He'd spin it into a story about hypocritical TV hosts and the death of honest conversation. He'd make jokes about it, laugh about it, and move on. But Lorraine knew she wouldn't move on so easily. This moment would define her for a long time to come. Not the thousands of successful interviews, not the years of reliable morning entertainment, but this one confrontation where everything fell apart. The floor manager approached cautiously. "Lorraine, we need to figure out what to do about the rest of the show." Lorraine looked up at him, her eyes slightly glazed. "What do you mean? We've got 40 minutes left to fill," he said gently. "Do you want to continue, or should we just run recorded segments?" Lorraine took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. The show must go on, right? That's what they always said. But how could she just carry on as if nothing had happened? How could she smile and chat with the next guest after what everyone had just witnessed? "Give me 5 minutes," she said quietly. The floor manager nodded and walked away, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the now empty studio. The audience had been cleared out during the break. The bright lights seemed harsh and unforgiving. This was supposed to be her show, her space, where she was in control. But she'd lost that control completely, and everyone had seen it happen in real time. Ricky Gervais had walked off her set, through those studio doors, and out into a world where he'd be proven right, where clips of their confrontation would validate everything he'd said about comedy, about free speech, about people being too sensitive. And Lorraine Kelly was left sitting alone in an empty studio, wondering how it had all gone so terribly, terribly wrong.